to Nap Trapped, everyone. Today we are talking about a very big and often exciting milestone, which is when to move your toddler to a big bed. Now, I have a confession. I have an over 3 year old who is still so happily in a cot in a sleeping bag. So, spoiler alert, I sit in the camp of crib till college.
I was definitely in the same crib till college camp. I had my third child in a bed in a cot until 3.5, simply because we just didn't have time to go and find a bed for her, and she was happy as Larry in there.
Oh, yeah, third child. Sorry.
Mm, yeah, exactly.
You you'll
Sorry,
you'll
darling.
get your own bed at some point.
Well, I just sort of felt the need to I didn't feel the need to move her. She was chill. She really is the cruisiest little one out of all three.
Love that.
So,
Every family needs at least one of those
mm,
chill babies.
100%.
So this is something that I think as sleep consultants, we often see when the transition hasn't gone so well. And Beck, I know you and I
Hmm.
are chronically putting toddlers back into cots.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about this as even from a preventative. Maybe you've got a 15-month-old and you're starting to see on social media that other people are moving their older babies, young toddlers into a bed. And what is our take on making this transition, when to do it, how to do it, and we'll just talk it out so that
Okay.
you don't
Sounds
get to that
good.
point where you're on the phone to us and we're saying, put your
Mm.
3-year-old back in a cot.
Oh, yeah. There's so many benefits to keeping little ones in a cot for sure. So let's nut it all out.
So, what
Lay it on
age
the
do you
table.
generally recommend for your families to make the transition?
I honestly believe that a really great age to transition to a big bed is 3 or just after
Mhm.
3. Main reason is because impulse control isn't developed until around the 2.5 to 3 year mark. So, for a lot of little ones, it's really difficult to go into a bed. Like initially, they're super excited and they might
Hmm.
sort of drift off to sleep, and it's all hunky dory for a little while. But then over time, you'll start to see that the pop outs start happening, the frustrating
The
bedtime
newfound
scenario of
freedom.
jump back at. Yes, that's right. And and it's just time to yeah, so I feel like it's 3 is a really great age to
Hmm.
start making that transition because they can understand a whole lot more.
I was going to say
um
communicating with them then at
mm,
that age, because what I find is that for a lot of families, they can explain the process, let's say they say to their 20-month-old,
mm,
and that little poppet can nod and smile and be so on board. And
yes.
then it's not their job to have
Mm,
impulse control.
yeah.
It's very, very tricky.
I think the other key component for moving to a big bed is dropping the nap. So having that nap
Mm.
done and dusted, because sleep pressure is going to be your biggest ally when it comes to little ones settling and falling asleep easily in a big bed. It's a big transition. And so you want that to be super successful straight off the bat. So if you're forcing little ones to have a nap in a big bed and they're not tired and ready for their nap, and then nap is a battle, and then either they've had a nap and they don't have enough sleep pressure for bedtime, or, there's lots of contributing factors. I think you just want to have a seamless run with just moving to a bed and your nap is done and dusted at this point.
Absolutely. And I think interestingly, whenever I make particularly TikToks about this, saying don't make the transition until you absolutely have to, they have a tendency to pop off because it's so, well, apparently a very divisive thing. And I think what it's always worth saying is that there are always some babies, you make the transition at
Mm,
15 months to a
yeah.
Montessori floor bed and that goes off without a hitch. And that is
Mm,
fantastic. And chances are it's also temperament. You've got a chill baby. I've got one
yeah.
when it comes to sleep that fantastic. There
Mm,
is also a lot of other babies and toddlers and just
mm,
family dynamics and the ability to resettle multiple times overnight and see them through an earlier transition where it just doesn't go like that. So if you're listening and think, oh, but it's working really well for me, fantastic. Keep going. This is for
mm.
more so for the families that are curious or have made the transition and think, why isn't this going so
Yeah.
well? There is no hard and fast for every family, but definitely our message is the later the better. One of the reasons I see families often decide to make the transition is because another baby is
Mm,
on the way. And I completely understand that. And for me, that is almost more reason to keep your toddler in their cot because a huge amount of change is coming everyone's way. And yes, it's
yeah.
wonderful change and it's exciting change. It is still change nonetheless, and change is hard. And
Mm,
so, for a toddler that is happy in their cot and it is a safe space and it is something that is consistent and theirs, and it's not just another element of change that they have to navigate,
mm,
hold steady with that.
yeah.
Continue to provide that sense of safety because a toddler will show that they want the newfound freedom of a cot and like you are a big girl or a big boy now. But in fact, we all want to know what's coming next. And so to
Yeah.
be able to keep that consistent pattern for them that this doesn't have to change. This ritual doesn't have to change while everything else is changing. So what I recommend for families, because I get, second baby, the expenses just
Mm,
keep going up and up and up,
yep.
is to get a secondhand cot on Facebook Marketplace or from a friend of a
Mm.
friend and have a cot for each child until your toddler is actually ready to make the transition.
Yeah, and on that, I would say that the marketplace, the secondhand cot would be the cot that your toddler would use,
Hmm.
and you just sort of, that's the hand-me-down. So the
Mm,
toddler's original cot will go to Bubby,
mm.
and mainly just because you're keeping the family, like the mattress within the family at that point, so the baby gets the
Yes,
same family mattress,
same family
for that
mattress. Or
reason.
you could even, choose to get a new mattress but keep the actual
Yeah, yeah,
cot
absolutely.
cot itself.
Yeah.
But we are all
Mm.
about budget-friendly suggestions here as well.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think, touching on the whole safe space with the toddler as well.
Mm.
So I don't know about you, Sally. Actually, I do know you love your bed so much.
I do. I'm
You,
under my
you're
dressing gown
always,
as we
yeah.
speak.
I think, that feeling of like jumping into bed and like, your bed so well, the comfy spots, that you can get into this position and it's going to be glorious and, get off to sleep and all the things. And, toddlers, have that for like they just love their bed, their safe space.
Mm.
All their toys are there. They don't fall out. If they've got dummies, they put them in certain spots. They can sort of
They know the
cozy up to
drill.
certain corners. It's a wonderful space for them. And when we are moving, taking them out, they've got to sort of learn all these new, soothing sort of strategies, I guess,
They
in a
got to
big
figure
bed.
out
So
how to get comfy in this new space. And
yeah.
actually, even as you say that, I think if I go to a hotel or, an Airbnb or just somewhere else, I
Mm.
never sleep as well. Even though that bed may be
No.
so
Mm.
comfortable,
Yeah.
I just had 6 weeks overseas. I packed my own pillow the whole six
Yeah.
weeks, even though it was like pillow menus at places we went to,
Yes.
because
Yeah.
I'm such a creature of habit,
Mm,
and toddlers are
mm,
exactly the same. And then, it's so much is out of their control,
yeah.
particularly if it is because of a new baby coming along, so that this
Mm,
is just their moment. This is theirs.
yeah, because when new babies come along, the family dynamics change.
Mm.
The pecking order sort of changes as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes on. Sometimes they're spending more days at daycare than they were previously, and so they're going to be super tired. And there's lots of people coming over to visit the new baby, and
Mm.
there's lots of tears and crying, and it's stimulating. And mum is sort of doing her very very best through the day, and
Spread a
it's
little bit
just
more thin. Yeah.
spread a little thin. And so it's just if you can keep the bed scenario, the cot scenario the same, like that whole sleep environment the same, that transition to a new family member is going to be a lot smoother, and it's probably going to keep the sleep for your toddler looking very schmick as well.
Mm.
So hold
We
that
love
steady.
schmick sleep.
We do love schmick.
I've
So
actually
hold that
worked with,
steady.
yeah, I've worked with families that their toddler has been a great cot sleeper. There's been
Mm.
no jumping out, and we'll discuss that in a second. But just knowing the impending arrival is like, oh, quick, we better do this. So then they've
Yeah.
had time, and it has gone so pear-shaped
Mm.
that we have then been left with a very narrow time frame to get them
Mm.
back into the cot,
Yeah.
and it can all just suddenly feel very rushed, and you're stuck sort of not in a cot and not in a bed, either of them being successful. So particularly if your baby's having no other sleep issues and they're in their cot, I should say toddler, but they're always our babies.
Yeah.
If it ain't broke, do not fix it.
Yes,
So
that's right.
I guess that comes to the point of like the most common thing we see is jumping out or climbing out of the cot. And I
Mm.
think first and foremost, you raised a really good point before that sleep pressure is going to be your best friend in preventing cot and crib jumping and climbing, because what I see is a wake window or a huge long nap, and then maybe a wake window that's not quite long enough. And then that toddler has energy and
Mm.
wakefulness to burn. And
And
like, cool,
stamina.
yeah,
Stamina.
I am going to give this a whirl. Whereas if you have already dropped that nap, then you know, come, let's say 7 p.m., that toddler is
Mm.
tired, that they are going to fall asleep. And so we have already mitigated the risk of them wanting to try something really cool and exciting.
Mm.
The next thing I would do to prevent this, because like we are all about the preventative measures rather
Yeah, we
than
want to
the
hold that
reactive,
cot. Yeah.
exactly, is to keep your toddler in a sleeping bag. And
Mm.
I say bag specifically, the
Mm.
one, where all legs are zipped into the one thing, as
Mm.
opposed to either just being in pajamas with a little blanket or at the age of 2.5 in the cot, or one of the sleeping bags with leggies, which we see
Yeah,
a
like a
lot of.
onesie sleeping bag. Yeah.
Yeah, where they zip in between, and it can sort of transition. Even some can
Mm.
transition between the sleeping bag and the leggies, because
Mm.
if they've got legs
Mm.
available to them, they can grip, they can climb,
Yeah.
they can be a mountain goat in the cot, and the sleeping bag will help prevent that. And it just
It,
continues to signal to them that this is sleep. This is sleep time.
yeah,
Nothing else is changing.
it's been a huge difference in the amount of families coming to me, like say in the first 5 years of when I was doing this to now, the amount of little ones that are able to get out of their cot at a much younger age because the sleeping bags have changed, and the ability to have feet exposed and get
Mm.
range of leg movement to swing over and try and climb out is so much greater. So definitely you want to try and, if you're starting to see little ones wanting to get a leg over, immediately go back into a bag that your feet are enclosed in.
And I'll even
100%.
take that one step further. If you have made the transition at all because your toddler can get out of their sleeping bag, and both of my babies have at some point figured out they can
Mm.
unzip it and take it off and call out, I put it on backwards so they like a little baby sleep.
Yeah.
What is it? I can't even think of the word. Straight jacket.
Straight jacket. Yeah,
A little baby
yeah.
sleep, straight jacket, but they can't reach the zip.
Yeah.
And so they are able to stay in it for much longer. And you can get sleeping bags for long toddlers. I have a
Oh, you can.
long-legged
Yeah.
toddler. There
Mm.
are ample brands that
They
maybe
go
we're
all the
so
way up
pro
to
this.
10. They like Love to Dream do a big range. Like there's sleeping bags that will go all up to an age of 10,
I feel
which
like
is
maybe we need a
crazy.
nap trapped bag. Really, you
Yeah.
are nap trapped. You're trapped
Yeah,
in the
you are
sleeping bag.
trapped. But even my daughter, I mean, she loved her sleeping bag. Like she would just
Mm,
get into it, even at 5, 6 years old, 7, maybe even a little bit later. But they do make really long ones. So there's always an option to have your
mm.
little one in a sleeping bag, no matter what age they are. I'm just going to
That
have to
reminds me,
put it
my
there.
sister, my younger sister, when she was a baby, loved her sleeping bag so much that it became her comforter. So my mum actually
Mm.
then cut it up into a
Oh,
more like comforter lovey safe shape, so that
yeah.
when she transitioned, she still had her sleeping bag, and we
Oh,
call it a
that's very
wooey in our
cute.
house. So it became
Oh.
a wooey for her. So yeah, sleeping bag, the actual bag, put it on backwards if
Yep.
needed, um, and that will help prevent. Another thing I think that's worth mentioning is that sometimes I think families see their child, maybe you see it on the monitor, go to climb out
Mm,
and just say, oh, okay, it's happened
mm,
this half time. Maybe you've even intervened before they're fully executed
yep.
the climb out, and it's like, okay, great, we're setting up the bed tomorrow.
Mm,
I'm going to suggest we put a step in between. So this is easier if you've got a child that is maybe a bit more compliant with rules. But
mm.
I have told my toddler no, that I saw him go to climb out once. Actually, it happened in Bali, and I was like, "Where is he?" And he
Oh,
had
yeah.
like leveraged over I had it too close, the porta cot too close to the bed, and you can see him like check on the camera, and then like inchworms his way up the bed.
Yeah.
I explained like this is an unsafe choice. In our family, we do not climb out of the cot, and you
Mm,
could hurt your head and have a big fright. The answer is no. And he hasn't tried again. And even when I've had him, maybe we've been playing and he's asked to read books or something, and I see him, even during an awake window, go to climb out, I have reiterated, no, if you need to hop out, you call for mummy and I will come and get you, so that
mm,
he doesn't even have the moment. I mean, talking of mountain goats, he can climb anything. I'm not
yeah.
stopping him from practicing a much needed physical milestone, but it doesn't happen in the cot.
Yeah.
And
You have some
that has
really
bought
clear
us so much
boundaries.
time. Yeah, boundaries. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
We have got really clear boundaries. And even with my first child, we were over 3. We transitioned out of the cot because she had climbed a bit. And her issue, she wasn't that she kept coming out a million times, but I found her with a leg up on the windowsill, even though luckily windows are always locked in our house, on a windowsill. And I said to her after a week, I was like, this just shows me we're not quite ready yet. And I put the cot side back on. It was not a punishment. She was not in trouble. It was just like, okay, cool, we've tried this. And these actions tell me that this is not quite the right time. 2 weeks later, she had no issues going back into the cot. She said, Mummy, can I try again? Absolutely. And we've never looked back.
Mm,
So
yep.
you can hold steady on that boundary of the expectation of what happens after you
Yeah. And
make
my
the change.
story is very similar. Like I was talking about my daughter who stayed in her cot until she was 3.5. But during the 2-year regression, when she was very resistant to falling asleep for her nap,
Mm,
she unzipped her bag and tried to get a leg over. So I would stand at the door, and every time I saw her, like I had the door slightly shut, every time she went to put a leg over, I would stand at the door and I'd just say, no, and
mm.
then she'd put it back down again. No, put it back down.
I can
And
so
I
see
probably
this.
had to do that, yeah, for a couple of days. And it was she just eventually just stopped trying, which was
Yep.
fine, and then never tried again, never got out of the cot, like never wanted to after that. So you do have the opportunity to rescue your cot scenario
Yes.
by, you know, offering a behavioral aspect to it. So
Yeah.
a
And I
boundary.
think that is a good point, that if you are experiencing or starting to notice this between 18 months and 2 years, when we've got the
Mm,
18-month regression and the 2-year regression,
yeah.
which often coincide with absolutely age appropriate boundary pushing and autonomy seeking,
Mm,
then you can think, okay, I've listened to the Nap Trapped episode. The girls have
yeah.
told me that I'm going to treat this more with a behavioral approach,
Mm,
rather than saying, oh, okay, well, this is time to move.
we're
That
done. Yeah.
we're, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then let's talk about what if there is more serious cot jumping, like a toddler is well and truly climbing out. How do you advise families to make the transition so that we make it smooth as transition as possible, and we help to minimize what so often occurs is the million call outs, the million, those little feet we can hear down the hallway,
Mm.
that we want to try and minimize as much as possible?
Gosh, I think what we want to try and do is set bedtime up so it's going to be a positive experience. So if we've
Hmm.
had to, remove the cot from the scenario, what we're going to do is we're going to take the cot out. Um, so if little ones have been jumping and climbing out and it's become unsafe, then we do need to make that move.
Hmm.
So if it's um, I guess you want to hold on to really good sleep habits that have been established. So if you've got a traditionally very good sleeper, you want to try and avoid starting off with doing lots and lots of things to help them get them off to sleep, because I know it's a different kettle of fish, like moving into a big bed, but you would move through your bedtime routine exactly as you would ordinarily. You would pop them into bed, have them in bed. Maybe you've got baby safety rails on the bed as well, just
Hmm.
to help them prevent them from
To
falling
not
out.
roll out. Yep.
Yeah, I would. This is the time that I would say yes, absolutely. Put your little one into a sleeping bag that has legs now.
Yes, I was just about to say that.
Yeah, and the reason for that is they are probably going to get out of bed, and if they do need to, maybe they are of the age that they can take themselves to the toilet, or they do want to jump out and remind you to come and do something for them,
Yep.
that they're not going to they're not going to get into any all sorts in a shuffle bag. So definitely have their feet out at that moment. The other reason for that too is just a quick side note is that most little ones aren't able to pull the blankets up for
Mm.
themselves until they're around the age of 4. So they will wriggle and move and carry on in a big bed, and so a sleeping bag will help keep that consistent temperature and keep them nice and warm all through the night. So
Yeah.
you can still use a doona, that's totally fine, but it is going to eventually wriggle
I
away.
always
And
see at that age and stage that the doona becomes more the accessory,
Mm.
because even if they can physically pull the doona up, the understanding at 3 a.m. of cause and effect of I've woken, I'm a bit cold, I should pull the doona up is a bit far-fetched. So it just becomes that they get their doona because they're in a big bed, but you don't have to worry that they're going to wake and require
Mm.
assistance or to come out because they've woken up cold. They're wearing a doona essentially in
Yeah,
their
absolutely.
sleep suit.
Yeah. So we're doing it, the bedtime routine as we ordinarily would. We would be, having them in bed, saying your good nights, all the things. Actually, what I would probably do, in all honesty, is just treat it as though I would treat the first night like I would as if they were in a cot,
Yep.
and
Nothing to
just
see
sort
here.
of like, we're all good. Okay,
Yeah.
good night. And like, see what happens. Like,
Mm.
give them an opportunity to show you how capable they are. So
Mm.
you've always got to make sure that you're being curious. It's a big thing for all babies and toddlers, not necessarily jumping the gun and thinking they can't do it. They're going to need me to do X, Y, Z. You have to step back, be curious, see what happens.
Mm.
Um, and I guess we just go from there, like how it rolls.
Yeah. Um, and I think in saying that, don't be afraid that if, even like me and like some of my families, if you do have to go back into a cot, it is not a punishment. It is not a fail. It
Mm,
is it just didn't work. And that is okay. It will happen. There is, even though I say cot till college, no one's still at a cot till, like at some point, your child will transition beautifully into a big bed. And the later you can do that, the better.
mm.
I think, we'll do another episode on what to do with older toddlers and coming out a million times over, and how to sort of manage that from a behavioral sleep training aspect.
Yeah,
And that's a big episode all about toddler
it is.
boundaries. But I
Yeah.
think for now, our key takeaway is that if your child is sleeping well in the cot and they're older, like mine at over 3, there is no rush. The ideal age for the transition from cot to a bed, ideally for us, is 3+ years,
Yeah.
when they're better able to handle the change, understand the rules, and have a little bit of improved impulse control, because that's really the biggest culprit for the shenanigans that then
Yeah,
occur.
absolutely.
If If you have to do it from a safety perspective, we've gone through a couple of ways that we can even try and buy you increasing amounts of time, including the sleeping bag on backwards, the nose through the door. I've even done it through the monitor when I've seen a leg
Oh,
go
so
over and
handy.
I say it through the speaker and say, no, unsafe choice type of sleep. And even that is like, she's always
Yeah.
watching me. And they lie
I'm
back down pretty
eyeballing
quick.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Mummy always knows. But there are steps in between. And then once you do make the transition, it's all about communication and giving them a great deal of, I guess we want to trust them initially so that we don't throw in a whole lot of new variables
Mm.
that they're then having to try and wean out and undo with a toddler. Then, if you've got issues, which commonly occur, we either look at going back into the cot or you're going to listen to our future episode on how we manage toddler bedtime and overnight shenanigans when they're coming out a million times.
Mm. That'll be a big episode. Can't wait to do that one for you guys.
This is why I like babies
Buckle
and
up for
cots.
that one.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, I need to get, like crib till college tattooed somewhere. What would Sally do? And everyone start searching on Facebook Marketplace.
Oh yeah, there's going to be a huge influx of requests now for wanting to buy cot,
or
yes.
a 10-year-old size of a sleeping bag.
Sleeping bag. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
you're
it.
welcome. Happy shopping. All right, we will see you on the next episode of Nap Trapped. Bye.
See you later. Bye.